How happy would you consider yourself relative to the ideal life that you can imagine? This is the kind of question that we asked people from a broad range of backgrounds going across the U.S. last summer. And today we'd like to share with you their stories in the hopes that you can take away what is both a clear understanding what is both an elusive notion, but also a common human experience. This journey started for us with this very simple idea, and that was to enrich a travel, go beyond tourism. And we were surprised with the consistency of themes that people addressed. And today we're going to share with you 5 of those themes that stand out above the rest in this unscientific and very anecdotal research. First, here's a short video.
The happiest thing to me is having a peace of mind.
People having agency and capacity and the ability to make choices in their lives.
So we're always trading our happiness for some future promise of happiness.
Central elements of happiness are number 1, discovery of what's important to you. And number 2, organization, which may involve not doing dope over a lifetime, not smoking cigarettes.
Living a life that's in integrity with your dreams and your abilities is the most important thing, and I think happiness follows from that.
Happiness is really caught up in what I would think of as the pleasures of difficulty.
I'm so lucky that I had the courage to take this journey.
There is not somebody happier than me.
Jus Lakers, he's a US chess master and he plays in the streets in New Orleans, and he told us how when you find it, it's like if everything would revolve around you, all the plans will revolve around you, and basically it fits. So we are all potential simulations of a path that we randomly walk, and in this process we try to identify what gives meaning to our lives. We try to identify what gives us a feeling of purpose, and in this process, finding this it is something very important. And for example, Jude, he remembers very vividly the moment, the rainy afternoon, when he realized that he wanted to dedicate his life to chess. But this process, like any other adventure, this process of discovery is a challenging one, and you have to deal with the unknown and uncertainties. And Catherine Coles, who is a poet in Salt Lake City, she told us about the importance of loving the questions. She told us about Rainer Maria Rilke, the German poet, and his letters to a young poet, when he was telling the young poet, well, you have a lot of questions now. Love the questions. Perhaps one day, far away in the future, you will find your way into the answer. And these 2 ideas of both discovering and being able to love the questions deeply resonated to the people we spoke with.
And yet this process of discovering is inextricably linked with engaging, that is, actively pursuing your vision and being committed to that vision. One of the first stops we made on this trip was to speak with Carol Graham, who is an economist researching well-being in Washington, D.C., and she introduced us to the concept of eudaimonic happiness. That is, generally speaking, human flourishing. And one central element in Aristotle's understanding of this concept is that one cannot merely possess an ability, but must actively use that. Must actively use that skill in order to live a fulfilling life. We spoke with Marco Rodriguez, who is a graph systems expert in New Mexico, and for him, he can code and program all day on his computer because nobody else has done it correctly. And by solving a problem, he can make the world in his liking. So this goes beyond the ephemeral pleasures or passive contentment or even the basic physiological needs that we have, which are all important to our happiness. But in a eudaimonic understanding of the world, happiness is perhaps best measured by how we live our lives, our agency, the possibility to make choices. And at the same time, this doesn't happen in a personal space. It's relational, in a relational environment. And indeed, most of the people that we spoke with alluded to relationships and community as a central property of their happiness. Jeff Raz, who has been a professional clown his entire life, recently started a project where, like Patch Adams, he visits hospitals and sick people in hospitals, and for him, making them smile and laugh isn't about the joke or just something funny that he does, but it's about that connection that he establishes with the person. And Even Leanna Standish, who is a neuroscientist, spoke about how her scientific understanding of the world informs the importance of this human connection. She cited entanglement, which is a notion in quantum physics, which has been proven in experimental research over and over again, where two particles are correlated. And when separated, if one particle spins in the opposite direction, the other will also spin in the opposite direction. And the implication here is even at a subatomic level, there is a measurable connection upon interaction. And for Leanna, being cognizant of this basic human truth, this basic physical truth, speaks volumes to the importance and centrality of connecting.
We were very interested in understanding in our trip how people deal with difficulties, how people deal with frustration. And we found two main types of answers. For the things that are out of our control, well, just adapting to this new situation and being flexible enough to adapt to this new given in our lives. But we're much more interested in understanding how difficulties sometimes trigger action. And precisely, Carol Graham, this economist from DC, she told us about the paradox of the frustrated achievers. So people that, even though they would be much better off in terms of well-being according to the average, they report lower levels of happiness precisely because their expectations are very high. And a good example will be Melissa Bonan. She has a beautiful studio, she paints, and she has a beautiful studio in Lafayette in Louisiana. And she told us how she keeps pushing the idea of the masterpiece. So for her, whenever she's done with one of her paintings, she's never fully satisfied, because for her, satisfaction kills creativity. And if she will be fully satisfied, there will be no reason to wake up the next morning and go back to the studio. So in the gap between expectations that are very high and the assessment of reality that she does that is lower, she finds the energy to move forward. And without that gap, we wouldn't find the energy to fix problems, to make changes, or to revolt when something we consider is unfair. And finally, believing and having ideals. We have found with the many people we have talked to that life is something else than an individual or a social experience, is somehow a spiritual experience. And for most of them, grounded on political ideology, on moral values, or in religious beliefs, there is a component of life that is transcendence. Wayne, he's a Navajo shepherd in a reservation in Arizona, and he told us how he reads the Bible every day. He goes with his sheep, like around the reservation, and he carries a Bible in the back pocket of his trousers, and he reads it every day. And it has been something very important for his life. Also, George Sosenko, he's a revolutionary. He fought in the international brigades in Spain. He fought in World War II. He has been an anarchist and a freedom fighter during all his life. And he was telling us how his ideals have kept him alive. He is now 93 years old, and these convictions haven't changed.
We weren't on a search for a definition of happiness on this trip, and indeed, as we've discussed, within each of these themes, people live them out very differently. Wayne and George both refer to their belief systems, but refer to distinctive systems and of faith and revolutionary ideals. But we do see a common human experience, and for both Victor and I, this has served as somewhat of a compass since making this journey. And in that respect, happiness is more of a verb than a noun. We have many different ways of discovering and engaging, connecting, striving, and believing in order to live a fulfilling life. Thank you.